I would like to welcome everybody to a seminar from the Department of Geology, Geography, and Environmental Studies. And in today's seminar, we have the privilege of hearing from GEO 290 students. And these are students who are geography majors and have taken the seminar course previously, but in this version of the seminar course, are also asked to do presentations. And today's seminar is titled Geography Vignettes, because what we get from this seminar are little snapshots or little insights into some interesting areas that have to do with geography. And I'm particularly excited about today's because we're heading to three very different directions within geography. So this is just a really nice small capsules of some of the things that geographers do. So especially if we have some students who may be joining up today and wondering what are some of the things we could do in geography, this is really going to set you up nicely for seeing a couple of those possibilities. The way this seminar will take place is that we'll have each presenter give their presentation and then have some minutes for questions for that particular presentation. Immediately after it, then we'll move on to the next presentation. And then at the end of all three presentations, then we'll have some time for additional questions if there are some, maybe directed to any of the presenters, or maybe some people might have some questions that might tie together some of the themes that we're hearing today. I'm happy to see that all three of our presenters are here. And I will introduce each of you as we come to the time that you're going to be presenting. So I'd like to start by introducing Claire right now. And Claire is a geography major who came to geography along her pathway of being at Calvin College, then Calvin University. She comes to us from Kentucky, but is feeling very comfortable in the Michigan environment as well. And since I started to get to know Claire in classes, it's been very evident that Camp Roger has been an important part of her life and a really enjoyable part of her life. And this semester, Claire is doing an independent study on outdoor education. And so bringing together those experiences that she's had and also the learning that she's been doing on this particular topic is going to feed into the presentation that she's going to do for us right now. So I'll invite the audience to do some wild applause where you are. This would be a good time to also check that you're muted, possibly turn off your video if you just want to sit back and enjoy, and I'll turn things over to Claire.
Thank you, Deanna. Yeah, I am excited to share all of this with you today. There we go. Things have changed a little since I last shared my screen. Yeah, like Deanna said, I am working on a independent study for outdoor education this semester. So I have been taking a lot of time to do some interviews with different people in the outdoor education world and just further explore what that means. To introduce myself a little bit more, I have been working at Camp Roger since, right after my freshman year. I've done kitchen staff there during the summers. I've been a summer camp counselor. And last spring, amidst the COVID crisis, I interned there for a while. And actually today I came from working there with a group from Sparta. So that's been a really cool opportunity. But today I just kind of want to break down what outdoor education can mean. So that could be just looking at different classifications of what it is. There's a lot of different terminologies that come with outdoor education that not many people are aware of. So I just want to kind of bring those to your attention and then kind of compare those terminologies with what goes on at Camp Roger. So the first thing to do is figure out what even is outdoor education. And the most generic term for outdoor education is education that is done in and is done about the outdoors. So you could be having a math lesson outside, and theoretically that's considered outdoor education. So it's a very broad term that can encompass anything. So anything from summer camps to taking school field trips is considered outdoor education. You could even be walking around a park and reading an informational sign there. That's a type of outdoor education. So let's break it down a little further. These are 4 of the terms that I've been working with this semester. So place-based education, environmental education, interpretation, and outdoor recreation. All part of the broader term that is outdoor education. Place-based education is the idea that we're using what's around us to teach a variety of different subjects. So you can use your local heritage, your local landscapes, different opportunities and experiences that are available in your area to teach a variety of courses. So math, language arts, science is the obvious one, but it's really tying that outdoors into every little bit of your education. Environmental education is a little bit more of exploring the environment and how it works, and then looking into environmental issues that may revolve around such things. So an example would be looking at a bog or a wetlands area and understanding the different pieces of how that environment works together. And then after learning about it, you kind of engage in problem solving any issues and get the opportunity to take action. So that's the broader idea of environmental education. Interpretation is more of a communication process. So it's taking the resource that you have, the lesson you're teaching, and trying to connect it to the interests of your audience through storytelling. You're kind of appealing to their emotions and what they already know. So it's more of a storytelling process in that way. And last but not least, we have outdoor recreation, and that's just getting outside and doing things, physical activity in the outdoors. And generally that activity allows for an individual or the community that's gone to do it together to make connections with each other and the natural setting around you. After understanding those different types of outdoor education, we also need to understand the types of educational systems that we have. So formal education systems is a lot like what we do at college. We sit in desks, we learn, set standards. So for pre-K through a senior in high school, you're learning from very trained teachers who are teaching you set standards and whatnot. Non-formal is still organized, but you're outside of that formal system. So you're going to another location generally and learning a set objective that they have for you. So that non-formal organization then has an identified clientele and objectives for their learning. In informal education systems, it's more spontaneous in the process of learning. So you're going, like I gave the example of going out to a park and reading a sign there. So it's more of you volunteering your time and voluntarily wanting to go learn something, not going because your teacher has to or told you to. Yeah, so it's all about that volunteering. So Deanna mentioned that I have a lot of connections with Camp Roger, and I just want to share a little bit about them before we get into what they do. So as you can see, Camp Roger's mission statement is to encounter and celebrate God's love for his children through relationships and experiences in creation. That is widely talked about at Camp Roger a lot in our summer camps and in outdoor education. And that's kind of what drives what they do. Camp Roger is a Christian organization that runs summer camps, outdoor education, and retreats and rentals. And they run those at both campuses, one in Rockford on Belding Road. That's Camp Roger campus, and Camp Scotty's campus is up in Howard City. So who goes to Camp Roger? We have a variety of programs that we do there. The first one that runs regularly is homeschool students, so ages 6 to 16. They come once a week every month and learn a set of curriculum that the director, Scott, has been working oh so diligently on putting together and maintaining. We also get a lot of school groups from West Michigan, all the way out to Sparta, like the ones we've had today. We've had some travel 45 minutes to an hour before to either of those campuses. So, and let's see, we have, generally that's elementary school and middle schools, but sometimes we get high school students as well. A new program camp is running is something called Go Days or Get Outside Days. And that's just a general population of students that come on their days off. So it's not through homeschool, it's not through a school group, it's more of that voluntary learning. Then every so often we'll get a company retreat or just company groups that come in for team building. So every so often we get a group of adults that come and join us on Camp Roger's property. And it's pretty cool. So when we're talking about having all those students there, we want to think about what they have to offer all those students and how we can offer new things each time they come, because there's a lot of students that return, and how do we offer a progression through our summer camps and even through outdoor education. And one of those is environmental education classes. We're running homeschool groups this past week at Camp Roger. They're focusing a lot on bogs and wetlands, but through their different ages, we group them into generally 2 different groups of different ages. They will do a variety of exercises. So today a group did some fishing and just hunting for frogs down at the lakefront. And other groups went on bog hunts and learned different things about the fauna and flora that are out there. So not just bogs and wetlands are offered there. There's a whole variety of different things we have, but that offers a progression as well as you do some of the easier things with the younger kids and move them on to harder things as they age. Another thing we do is team building exercises. That's just a really great way to help your group connect better with each other and learn to communicate better. But there too, we also have a variety of difficulties to help engage younger campers, younger students, as well as the occasional group of adults that we have. We also have adventure courses. So we have climbing towers, zip line, we have a high ropes course, and a lot of low ropes courses that are just another avenue into that team building idea, but also helps us do something we call challenge by choice at Camp Roger. We never force students to do anything that they're not comfortable with, but we invite them to challenge themselves, to get themselves to a place where they feel uncomfortable. So for example, on a climbing tower, some children, myself included, are not very fond of heights. So then we challenge the student to put on a harness, and if they feel okay, maybe they get clipped into our rope system before they find that they are really uncomfortable and they don't want to go any further. For some students, that's trying to climb with only 3 limbs instead of 4, just to get them to a point where they feel challenged and uncomfortable. So those are kind of 3 different aspects to what we offer at Camp Roger. So kind of concluding this short case study of what outdoor education means and what Camp Roger brings to the table in that area, we want to think about how they blend those terms and what Camp Roger has. So Camp Roger is a very non-formal setting. We don't have state licensed teachers teaching the information. Very obviously, they have college students like me helping teach the material as I have this week. So yeah, we have a set list of things we want to get done with them, things we want to challenge them with. So that's our organized educational activity, but it's not done within the classroom. We focus a lot on place-based learning at Camp Roger. We have access to a lake, to our bog. We have access to a large number of acres of woodland. And that just allows us to get outside and explore a lot of different areas within the area we have access to. So like going to the bogs and wetlands, we get hands-on experience there. We don't have to travel elsewhere to do those sorts of lessons. Environmental education lessons on the last slide, that was one of the key things that they offered at Camp Roger. We have a set of lessons to teach. So that's kind of the environmental education aspect of that. We like to invite our campers to ask questions, to dig deeper. And so the taking action part of environmental education isn't always something we pursue deeply on camp's property, but it's something we encourage students to ask about, and we offer challenges for them to do at home. It's something that's kind of loosely tied in as well. And outdoor recreation, we do a lot of things where we just get outside and do things. So our high ropes courses, climbing towers, that's something where we just get outside and we do things. In the winter, we get outside and we snowshoe and we cross country ski. That's just a chance to get outside and do something. It's not necessarily a set lesson. Yeah, and as we kind of think about all this and have all of this in mind, I want you guys to be aware that outdoor education and the different things that it offers doesn't always fall under one category or one term per se. Just in what I've talked about alone, Camp Roger offers a variety of things that fall under different terminologies: place-based learning, environmental education, outdoor recreation. That covers 3 of the 4 that I talked about today. So you can, anywhere you go where you find some sort of outdoor educational program, there will be some kind of mix. Yeah, that mix is really important too, because it offers a variety of aspects of learning for the students and for the general public that you draw in to your place of learning. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Really appreciative that you guys took the time to listen, and I'd like to answer any questions that you have about outdoor education. I will do my very best to answer them.
Thank you so much, Claire. You know, of course, that loud clapping is going on behind all of the names that you see on your screen right now. And I would invite questions. Either go ahead and unmute yourself and maybe turn on your video and ask a question, or you could go ahead and ask a question in the chat. Nathan, do you have a question?
Hey, Claire. As someone who went to Camp Roger growing up, what do you think are the main benefits you get from a informal outdoor education system?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's a big push to bring environmental education back into the school system. But in a way that's really good, and in a way it's also a danger, because there's a lot of kids who don't learn well in the formal education system. So by bringing it into a non-formal system, you kind of get that chance for the kids to interact with that information in a different way. So at camp, we do a lot of hands-on with our learning. Like we try and dig in the dirt and pick things up and examine them as much as possible. And that's not always something you can do in a formal education system. So I think whether you're doing summer camp and it's purely informal and you're coming just to have fun, or you're coming with a school group, I think it provides a good chance for you to engage in a different way.
While we're waiting for another question, something struck me that that perhaps the non-formal type of outdoor education would be the place that maybe current geography majors or other geo majors, as they're thinking about what to do after they graduate, that offers some opportunities, whereas many of our students in our department are not education majors, so they wouldn't be heading into the formal system. But can you comment a little bit on maybe possibilities for somebody thinking about what are they going to do after graduation?
Yeah, so part of my independent study has been kind of exploring that as well. Outdoor education is something I want to go into. So I've done a number of interviews with professionals out in the workplace, and one of them was in an outdoor education classroom at Ada Christian. And that one does require that you have some sort of teaching certificate. So for me, that was kind of like a red flag. I don't want to go back to school right away. So this non-formal education system really looks for you to have some sort of experience with kids. So the fact that I've worked a few summers at Camp Roger gives me a really good idea of working with kids and how that goes. So I say I kind of got into it by working at this summer camp and knowing that I wanted to work with kids. And it was a little too late to change my major to education at that point. So I'd say if that's something that interests you and you really like teaching or helping people better understand what's out there, there are other places to do it in different ways. It doesn't have to be with kids. You could go work at a state park or something and give little spiels there on something you're really passionate about. But there are different opportunities to teach and to help understand that aren't teaching kids.
It looks like Professor Surley has a question.
I have, yeah, a couple. Actually, Claire, talking about getting a certificate, and Jeanette can clarify this. Asable, I think, runs them, they used to. They run an excellent program in outdoor ed where they host you, give you a small stipend, and you end up with a certificate. And I think it works one semester, and sometimes people have taken two and just stayed there the whole year long. And they run outdoor ed with the local schools, and they render a huge service in that part of Michigan, which is generally one of the poorest school districts around. So Jeanette might know more of the current situation, but they had a wonderful program for many, many years. And I guess Paul Riemenschlager, is that right? Paul runs that now. Pat Flagg used to run it. But the other, I had a question with Camp Roger. For some of your teenagers, thinking geographically, do you do stuff with maps like orienteering or geocaching, or can you do that sort of thing with that group?
Yeah, we don't have access to all of the technology to do something like geocaching. Mm-hmm. But we do have maps of Camp Roger that a past Calvin student has prepared in their GIS class. And we have a set of compasses, so a little more old school, but we do things like that.
Nice.
Yeah, we have like a out in the woods Frisbee golf course set up that also doubles as our orienteering course. So that is pretty cool.
That's real cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Claire, for answering these questions. And people are applauding again. And we need to move on to our next presentation. But if there are more questions, people can stay and ask Claire questions at the end of the seminar. We're going to move on to a very different topic now that Benji is going to be acquainting us with. And I met Benji in his first semester at Calvin, and so have seen his kind of progress into the geography major and through some of the environmentally related majors. But one thing that has been true all the way through from the beginning was it was very clear that Benji is passionate about living things. And I think I've seen a bit of a change, but maybe it's just the things we've talked about have changed over the years. So early on, fish, it was very obvious that there was a large passion for fish. And I feel like in your later years at Calvin, I am hearing more about plants and a large passion for plants. So talking about a biogeographical topic just fits in very well with what I know about Benji. So go ahead, Benji, and introduce us to your topic.
Thank you very much. I appreciate those kind words. So let me share my screen real quick. We'll start from the beginning. It's a good place to start. All right. Is it showing up all right?
It's looking good.
Perfect. Thank you. So my seminar is going to be a combination of two stories that kind of really have inspired me throughout my time at Calvin, and that I was really eager to share with the public. So a plant of healing and harm is referring to plantain, Plantago major. It's a common weed. I bet any of you could find one by taking 2 steps outside your front door. It's very common weed from Europe. It's become naturalized in societies all over the world today. It's spread to pretty much every corner of the world. As you can see, it has a great capacity for spreading seeds. The reason this was spread around the world was because of its medicinal properties. Europeans brought it with them wherever they went as for all kinds of remedies. It could stop bleeding. It was known to treat rattlesnake bites. It was used as painkiller, treat ulcers, diarrhea, and gastrointestinal issues. So it was a really good plant to have around. So here I have just a diagram of this is a map of major European explorations, and pretty much anywhere Europeans went, so did this plant. So the reason I bring this up goes to my first story, with the Pulaski Creek stewards. I've had the privilege to work with the Pulaski Creek stewards for all my years here at Calvin and see it grow and develop as we go. But during my time there, we did a lot of weeding through different native gardens and just weedings in general for cleanup reasons. But along the way, Dave Warner shared this story. We were just sitting there weeding in a garden, and he pulls a plant, and he's like, this is called plantain. Native Americans in the area called it the white man's footprint. It's a very common name amongst the Native American community when it was first introduced, and it's called the white man's footprint because it was a clear indicator of where white people had settled. So I just found that really fascinating that this plant could just tell Native Americans where the white man has been. So that was just a fascinating story at the time that later developed into something more. And a quick antidote here, I'm going to the effectiveness of its medicinal properties. Another time, I was collecting seeds with Dave in the field to grow in our greenhouses later on in the following year. And I was just picking seeds off plants, and I didn't see a bee that was sitting on the underside of one of the seed pods I was collecting, and got a really bad sting. In that moment, I just thought back to this plant Dave told me about a few weeks ago, and looked around. Sure enough, could find it within a few seconds, and I like chewed it up a little bit, put it on my finger, and I couldn't feel the bee sting within 2 minutes. So there's a lot of truth to the effectiveness of this common weed. So that was my sophomore year, the summer after my sophomore year. Later on, I had the opportunity through Calvin to go to New Zealand this couple of years ago now during the January term. And I found that this plant was still present here as well. As we looked around, here on the left, you can see, on the right, you can see the exploration of New Zealand, and first by Abel Tasman, a Dutch explorer who kind of just waved as he passed on by, really. And then later by Captain James Cook, who I've learned a lot through my studies here at Calvin, through this trip and my trip to Hawaii with Professor Bjelland. So once the Europeans colonized New Zealand, this plant spread around here as well. When I had the opportunity to come here, I had the opportunity to walk around with a local shaman in Rotorua, New Zealand. He had the tamoko, the face tattoos, indicating that he was a shaman and a healer. They earn their tattoos based on what they learn and achievements they've made. So he has the full tamoko tattoos, and I was walking with him, super excited, because we started talking about plants, and he's just pointing things out. He's like, well, this one cures such and such, this one's for this. And then he points at this plant in the lawn, and I'm like, oh, I know this one. He asked me, what do you think this one does? And then I tell him the story that Dave told me previously. And he kind of nods his head kind of solemnly in the moment and says, this plant grows wherever Papatuanuku needs healing. Papatuanuku in Maori culture is Mother Earth. In their culture, Papatuanuku, Mother Earth, is literally the earth. Nature around them has religious and spiritual background to it. Example of this on the right here is a picture of Tane Muhuto, one of the massive trees on the island, several thousand years old. And Tane Muhuto is the name of the child of Papatuanuku and Rangi Nui, Father Sky and Mother Earth. So this is just a quick example of like the significance of everything. So when he told me that this plant grows wherever Mother Earth needs healing, and I applied that back to my previous story with Dave, it really hit me, and I couldn't get it out of my head. Just connecting the dots and between the two stories about two native cultures an ocean apart, both affected by colonization of the white man, and how this one plant is kind of joined between these two cultures. So the white man's footprint, and it's a plant that grows wherever Earth needs healing. Yeah, that was just a huge, it just hit me so hard when I heard that. And to me, it was just a big eye opener into what I wanted to do and what I was passionate with. And I know I've always been interested in restoring native lands, and I've really felt a calling through that. And but through this, I also gained a passion for like in learning more about the native peoples and the social injustice that goes on even today. That is a shadow of the past throughout the US and the world. And it's really just, I don't know, I'm picturing it as a weed. It's like, what are the weeds we need to pull? It's easy to overlook some things in life and just say, hey, that weed, I should probably pull it, but maybe eventually, or no, you need to take care of those weeds now for a garden to flourish. So that was, that's my story of the white man's footprint, plantain. Thanks for coming. Special thanks to Dr. David Warmers for being a great boss and working with me the last 5 years. Miller, Dr. Miller, who led the New Zealand trip, Dr. Deanna Van Dyke, for hosting this event. Raiti, the shaman who told me the story of white man's footprint, and I'd lastly like to thank the GEO department for hosting this event for me to get my story out there. Thanks. I need to stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Benji. And I say that on behalf of the audience. I think if you click down towards the bottom of your screen and go to the green.
There it is. Found it. Oh no, that's not it. My bad. Is it good now?
There you go. Yes.
All right, perfect. I'm sorry about that.
Yep. No, you're fine. Lots of applause happening. Does that indicate, Mark, do you have a question? Or, okay. Then I almost hesitate to ask whether Professor Sturley has a question. No. Okay. Well, and again, you can put questions into the chat as well as opening up your video for that. While we're waiting for another question to come in, you have me thinking about that balance between a plant that is an invasive and weedy versus the healing properties of the plant, and also the place where the plant is native versus the place where it has been moving through the earth. How do you balance, or how do you put the plant in one category or the other category?
Could you rephrase that? I'm sorry, I got distracted by a chat.
Yeah, and actually the question in the chat seems to go beyond that. So my question is, how do you balance thinking about this plant for either its healing properties or for it as an invasive and a weedy plant?
In modern days, it is very uncommonly known that it's a plant of healing, and it's only ever sprayed and weeded out of gardens. I don't know if it has much of a balance right now. It's more seen as negatives these days. Segue to Natalie's question, does plantain have any negative impacts on places it is invaded? It doesn't have any major impacts, which is the interesting thing. It has kind of learned to coexist in the environments it has been introduced to. So I also thought about applying this to the talk, and just like humans have a lot to learn from this plant. If it can join a new community and not cause any major harm, we should try a little harder ourselves. So thanks for the question, Natalie. And Professor Van Dyke. Yes, Ralph.
Yeah, There's to my knowledge, there's a couple species of plantain that are sort of common weedy species. Are they all invasive, or did they all come over with Europeans, or are some of them native to North America too?
As far as I know, they're introduced, but I can't give you a direct answer on it.
Thanks. Do people routinely eat these in salads?
I have seen them in salads before. They kind of have that basil-y look, so
Yeah.
yeah. But I bet any one of you guys could step outside your door and find one within 2 minutes of searching. They're everywhere.
I have tons in my lawn.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm.
And we have a comment in the chat that maybe Benji, you might want to comment on as well. Mark Bjelland is recalling from his Pee Wee football field days that they were almost 100% plantain, and he thought it's because they does well on compacted soils.
Mm. That makes sense. It can grow just about anywhere. It's one reason it's considered a weed because it's can spread easily and fast, and like it's settled all over the world. So it's very adaptive to its surroundings. So yeah.
Well, I'm going to move us along to our last presentation. So thank you once again, Benji, for telling us the double stories of this plant and giving us a lot to think about.
Thank you.
And for our next presentation, we're going to go to Andrew. And I also got to know Andrew in his first semester at Calvin. And as Andrew came to Calvin, it was very apparent that he was very interested in French and he was interested in geography right from the very beginning. And while he has been at Calvin, he's taken advantage of the semester in France opportunity. And I'm delighted that Andrew's going to bring his interest in geography and in French and France together in this next presentation. So let's welcome Andrew.
All right. So yeah, as Professor Van Dyke mentioned, in addition to studying geography here, I'm also majoring in French. So when I had the opportunity to do a semester in Grenoble in the fall of 2019, I jumped at the chance. I got to stay with a French family for 4 months and take classes at a French university. And on our time off, I got to explore the region around the city, as well as travel to London and Paris and Lyon in Italy. And it was just really, really cool. And so overall, it was an incredible experience. And if anyone here is able to do it, I would definitely recommend it. So in this talk, I'll mostly be focusing on this area here around Grenoble, the province of Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, which also includes this one over here. So, but I'll also be mentioning a little bit about the Mediterranean coast down here, as well as the Pyrenees Mountains down here. So Grenoble itself is a medium-sized city. It's about the same size as Grand Rapids, if you include the metro area. It's within about 80 miles of both Lyon and Geneva, France, as well as about 150 miles north of Marseille. It's also it's a very old historic city. It's hosted the Olympics in 1968, and it's located right at the foot of the Alps. So as you can see, it's a very beautiful region. The first day or so that we were there, we got the chance to take this funicular up to the Bastille, which is this castle on the top of this mountain here. And we got to see a whole 360 view of the city, and it was just beautiful, mountains all around. So yeah, the area is dominated by mountains over here in the east with the Alps and the Pyrenees down here. Grenoble itself actually is completely flat, just about, and it's located less than 1,000 feet above sea level. So it's in this small little valley right here. So I thought that was very interesting. The southwest region down here is relatively flat, and it's used for farmland and industry mostly. Let's see. So the climate is, like most of Europe, it's heavily moderated by the Gulf Stream. And so the climate itself is similar to West Michigan, though it's a lot less variable and a lot less extreme weather. This map over here marks the average annual temperature in degrees Celsius. So down here we see 11.3 degrees, which translates to about 52 degrees Fahrenheit average for the year in the region. And yeah, the Mediterranean coast is a lot warmer. It stays pretty mild all year round, even though it's at a very high latitude because of the moderating effects of the Gulf Stream. So into more of the urban geography of the region, one thing that really interested me while I was there was the difference in the city structure between France and the US. I'm sure it's like this to some extent in a lot of Europe, but I mostly noticed it in France. And it's that the role of the downtown and the suburb in French cities is essentially reversed to what we see in the US. In the central business district of most French cities, you'll find a thriving downtown. You'll see shops everywhere, lots of beautiful parks, great restaurants. And in a lot of ways, it's just a very desirable place to be, a lot more so than in an American city. And in addition, the housing is considered to be the most desirable, and it's definitely the most expensive. On the other side, though, the French suburb is a lot less glamorous than American suburbs. The French term banlieue, which translates directly to suburb, is used similarly to the term inner city in the US. And it's used to refer to the low-income block housing neighborhoods that surround French cities. So you can see in these pictures, just very kind of drab-looking apartment buildings all over, just not very appealing. But despite being badly stigmatized, they're home to a great mix of cultures and backgrounds, and they're home to a lot of rich and vibrant culture. So while I was there, I actually lived in a building that looked very much like this. And it was just really interesting to see the shift in culture as I would take the tram into the downtown to go to class every day. So lastly, I wanted to talk about the experience of studying at a French university in comparison to here at Calvin. So while I was there, I was taking one class through Calvin, and then the rest were through a kind of cultural exchange program with the university there. So I was with other international students who were also non-native speakers of French. So my experience may not be representative of everyone's college experience in France, but I'll talk about what I know. So the first thing I noticed, besides all the classes being in French, was that the quote school pride that we have in American schools doesn't really exist there. So you never see somebody walking around wearing a sweater with the school's name on it or anything like that. And it really didn't seem to be a sense of pride for anybody. And also, they didn't really seem to care about the college experience. In America, a lot of people feel pressured to stay in a dorm and, have a meal plan and just like experience college life, but that's not really a thing there. A lot of people live at home and commute to class every day. And the last thing that I noticed was that all of the classes were huge. So there'd be hundreds of people in pretty much every class. And so there wasn't really any interaction with professors. And so that particularly made me be thankful to be studying at a small university. So overall, my experience in France was amazing. As a geography and French major, it was great to see how those two interests of mine intersected in the real world. I absolutely recommend to any geo major to travel and see places that you hear about and study, because it makes the experiences a lot more real and applicable. And it's just a really good thing to do. And so here are some of my references. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I'm saying that on behalf of everybody else who is also clapping and cheering right now. We have time for some questions for Andrew. And Andrew, perhaps if you want to stop sharing your screen.
Sure.
And again, questions can come in the chat, or you can show up on video and wave your hand or so that I know that you have a question. One of the things that I was wondering about as you were speaking, Andrew, especially when you started making that comparison of Grenoble being similar size to Grand Rapids and similar climate in some ways to Grand Rapids. And I started thinking, but what about the food? Was the food similar?
The food was a lot better there, I thought. Yeah, a lot of traditional, just traditional French food. My host's family made me escargot a couple times, which I really, really enjoyed. But yeah, it was really good.
I've also heard of some cultural differences maybe between, this may not be France, but this might be Europe, between the kind of the American or the North American way of kind of eating food in public, kind of out on the street and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that not really being a, like, I don't know if it's going as far as saying that's taboo in that culture, but just would seem really rude to be eating in front of other people.
Yeah, they definitely savor sitting down and eating food with other people and talking and just taking your time and enjoying it. So it was very much taboo to eat on the trams or other public transport. So yeah, you were pretty much expected to sit down and take your time and enjoy your meal whenever you ate.
We have a question in the chat coming from Natalie. What kind of agriculture was in the region?
So the region around Grenoble was mostly mountainous or urban. So there wasn't a lot there, but I know that the agriculture in the rest of the region is fairly similar to the American Midwest. I know lots of potatoes, wine, so like grapes, and a lot of dairy too.
We have a question from Benji.
Curious, I did a semester right across the border in Oviedo, Spain. I'm curious if you also had lots of like pig raising around where you were, or was that more of a Spanish thing?
Yeah, I didn't see any of that.
Okay.
Not really.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I'm really interested in European bike cultures. Was there much of a bike culture in Grenoble?
Oh yeah, yeah. Lots of people would bike to work every day. There were bike lanes everywhere, and being almost completely flat, it was very easy to do that. There was a program with the university where if you wanted to, you could rent a bike for around 30 euros for the semester. I unfortunately didn't do that, but I very much regret it.
I was interested in your comments that the kind of the reversal of the suburbs versus the inner city in France compared to North America, and where you commented then that the suburbs also had this real rich kind of cultural diversity, ethnic diversity, which made me start thinking about, well, the central city in Grenoble or other French cities. Did you really, as you took the like public transportation into that area, did you start to see a lessening of cultural diversity, and what would that what would the field be for the center of the city then?
I think it definitely seemed more European in the central city. So there was definitely cultural diversity there, but it seemed a lot more like just European, I would say.
And then you're describing what's happening in the suburbs. Is that more a feeling of immigrant communities coming in and?
Yeah, that's more of a feeling of just cultures from all around the world. So a large North African population, a lot of East Asian and South Asian, and also some people from North America too. So it was very interesting to see.
Well, very interesting to think about your presentation, also the two previous presentations that we've had. If there are any questions right now for any of the three presenters, or questions that might be pulling out themes that we've heard in all of the presentations, now would be a good time to bring up those questions. I'm trying to pause the appropriate amount of time for people to be able to raise questions, but not pause too long so that everybody becomes very uncomfortable and starts looking for something else to do. But hearing no questions at this point, I'd just really like to thank all of our speakers. Perhaps I'll invite the audience to turn their videos on to give some video expression of applause at this point in time. And we can see our speakers there as well. So thank you to the three of you. I'm going to officially call this seminar to a close. Invite everybody back next week for our last seminar of the semester. And anybody who wants to ask some informal questions afterwards can just stay on Zoom and talk to our speakers after this.